This is Deborah Bannock. I am the founder and CEO of D. Whitney Consulting, and I'm here on the Hope at Work blog today with Susan Morgan Bailey from Marsh & McLennan. She is in charge of culture and well-being for Marsh & McLennan, and today we're going to have a conversation about some of the changes around how we connect with our people at work as a result of going through COVID, as a result of the changes and some of the racial tensions that are going on today, and how that's affecting the way that we need to have human connection at work. So Susan, I'm so glad to have you with me today. It's really nice to be together. And I just wanted to start by asking, if you don't mind, just give a quick background for our listeners on how you became the leader of culture and well-being at Marsh & McLennan, and then we'll get right into the conversation.
All right, sounds good. It's great to be here. And the quick commercial for kind of my background, I started out as a middle school teacher for a few years. And so teaching and empowering others is in my DNA. But I ended up going back to grad school and focused on my other passion, which is health. I've worked in public health. I've worked in organizations, helping employees be healthy and well. I've worked on the vendor side of the equation with a couple different national wellness vendors. And my last gig, I earned a lot of frequent flyer miles and hotel points, and decided I needed to be home more often to be with my boys, who are now freshmen and sophomores in high school. And so found the role at Marsh & McLennan Agency here in Michigan. And I looked at it and thought, gee, that's, the kind of thing I can do in my sleep. Very tactically oriented was the original job description. A little bit of strategy in there, like, help our clients design strategies to take care of their people. But it was really very, let's throw some tactics out there, focused on that. And I've been there 4 years now. And in those 4 years have had several awakenings. And one of those awakenings relates to what you've shared of, how do I end up with culture and well-being? And that came out of that, revelation, working with smaller employers. Prior to that, the employers I was working with were 10, 20, 50,000 employees. I'm working in the smaller business environment, and comparing that to some of my experience in the past, when it finally really sunk in a very clear way that you can try and take care of your people every day and throw tactics at them and do all those things, but if the culture that surrounds them does not support employee thriving, you're going to struggle. And so a couple years ago, we decided that we ought to focus on culture and well-being together. And so I spend a lot of time helping our clients see the big picture, and then also the smaller tactical picture, and have a lot of fun doing that.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much. And I'm really excited about, you and I have been talking about human connection in the workplace. And you had a great thought about the fact that really in the past, companies worked on employee strategies, right? And a lot of times they would roll that employee strategy out over a network across an organization. But today, we need to be a little bit different in how we attack those strategies, how we approach them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on let's talk about what makes it different today. What do you think employees need, and what should people be doing when they think about rolling out strategies today?
Yeah, it's funny. I wish there was a simple answer to that. So, my apologies if there isn't. But it's been, I could think back to a time when I was leading wellness at DTE Energy, a local utility here based in Michigan. And one of the things that we did to help our team understand why we had a health and well-being team, because there was actually several of us working there, and why health was important to the organization, was that we actually had, as part of open enrollment one year, we had everybody fill out a form, and on the form it asked 3 questions, the same one question 3 times. And the question was, my health and well-being is important to me because. And we wanted them to answer that 3 times. And there was no right or wrong answers. We had them turn in their forms in order to earn a premium discount, because that's a common tactic that's been employed for years, you know, the idea that we're going to engage people in their health. But the lesson that was learned in that was, for many of the leaders in the organization that I worked with, was, hey, it wasn't until I filled out that form that I realized why my health was important to me and how individual that was. You know, one response would be, well, because I want to keep up with my grandkids, or because I want to keep up with my own kids, or, you know, I want to be there to walk my daughter down the aisle. You know, those responses were different. And so for me, that was the beginning of that sort of big revelation: one size does not fit all. Then continuing through my experience, I mean, we learned, you know, in one of my next employer, it was, you know, choice matters. If we have folks and we tell them you have to do this, this, and this, humans don't like to be told what to do. We like choice, you know, so there's that. Like, I want to be in control of what, as much as I can control of in my life. Now, here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and control has been stripped away in many respects. You know, we've been asked to lead our lives differently. You know, we're wearing masks, we're social distancing, we're doing all these things, frankly, a lot of people don't want to do, because it's somebody else telling us what to do. And so on top of that, we're struggling with this idea that we want to take care of our people that we have. We want them to show up to work every day. We want them to be fully engaged. And, you know, the idea that the way to do that, that there's one way to do it, it's flown out the window. I mean, we knew this was coming. We knew that health and thriving was individual and unique, and the way that I got there was different. And now here we are, and this pandemic has proven that, you know, one size doesn't fit all in terms of the benefits you offer, in terms of how you lead, in terms of how you connect with employees. The light has been shined on that reality.
Absolutely. And as you're speaking, it's really making me think about, you know, one size does not fit all. And what that means is we need to be able to better understand our people. And, you know, we've been at my organization, we have a lot of conversations about belonging, and sometimes to create better understanding between human beings, it means sort of peeling back that onion, right? It means getting to know individuals more uniquely. And you and I have discussed the importance of, an example of that is even knowing someone's home situation. So we have a lot of parents right now that are struggling because their children are being homeschooled. In addition to them being hardworking professionals, they're balancing that with their lives. And so managers have to have different conversations today than they have in the past, right? Like it's a deeper knowing of the people on our teams. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, it brings up that question of boundaries. So historically, when we're at work and we're having conversations between employees, there's been sort of this unwritten rule that you can ask me some things, but you can't ask me too much. But now with COVID, with the tensions that are going on in our communities, the importance of having real conversations seems to be elevating so much more. So let's talk about that for a minute. Like when you think about the conversations that you're having with some of the leaders, how often are people needing to express or understand how to have better conversations with their teams?
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, the other thing that's been highlighted by this is just the need for good, strong leadership and skills in that space. I mean, you know, dialogue for a long time, you know, talking about some of the things we're talking about in the workforce, as you said, was frowned upon. And now, you know, here we have employers who are just going for it. You know, let's have an open dialogue about Black Lives Matter, what it means to be Black and how it feels to be Black in America, or a person of color, or, you know, whatever that dialogue is that fits. And, you know, along with that, there's an element of we have to set ground rules, what's okay, what's not okay. So we're seeing more organizations open up and have those dialogues, provide guidance to their leadership around that. That's one example. I think the other example is, and I've heard people talk about it. I know more about people's kids and families and pets than I did before this. And part of it is because of Zoom, and part of it is because, employees are more forthcoming in the sense, that they're just saying, listen, this is what my reality is outside of work. It used to be, I think we talked about this a little bit before. My heart hurts a little bit for the manufacturing, blue collar versus the white collar, those that can work from home and do the job. That's one, piece of the puzzle. It's a little bit easier to be more flexible with that group. I know in our organization and several of those companies that we work with, they have said, listen, if you need a 7-day work week, let's talk about it. How do you do 40 hours in 7 days? And we're working with people on that customization of the work week. Well, it's kind of hard to do that in a manufacturing space because, they tend, we need people to run, we need this many people to run this many machines at these times in order to produce product. And so that's where, conversation is really key. And for years, this has been a hard thing to discuss, but my hope is that this is the thing that evolves the way we think about manufacturing and shift work and, being flexible in that space. I mean, I know we have seen more of it lately, but it's the simple idea of, back in the simple, but not always easy to execute. But, right. You want to stay in business and you want your people to come back to work and not take unemployment. How can you get there? And it may be saying, well, what do you need? Well, I need to work from X to X. And, maybe that company is going to be bold enough to say, let's figure out how to do that. Or I need these days and these shifts. In a non-union environment, might be easier to do. In a union environment, it's going to require a lot of conversation and collaboration. But it's doable. It's just a matter of whether or not the leadership is bold enough to, in the words of Rich Sheridan, run the experiment. Let's try it and see how it goes.
It does seem like people need to be much more flexible and agile in their thinking about that. And I love that idea of, it's like this whole new time of listening. It's, if we're, the listening even comes down to, if we're scheduling on a manufacturing floor, how are we uniting together to make sure that the workflow works for everyone? And that we understand everybody's unique needs as we're building in those processes. So it's a time of a new level of listening, a new quality of listening, and a new way of sort of honoring and respecting everyone's whole selves, their whole lives as they're bringing themselves to work, which I think is fantastic and so needed. So I know we're working to keep this to a set time so that we can make it easy for our listeners. Just wondering if there's any parting thoughts you have when it comes to this idea of listening a little bit differently today, and then we'll sign off after that.
Yeah, I think the one thing that came up for me as I was thinking and hearing you is, not being afraid to just ask folks, how are you doing and how can I help? There's a lot of power in that, and trusting that if the employee says I'm good and I don't need anything, there's still something happening there. What everybody needs right now is to know that somebody else cares about them and that they are not alone. I mean, we are, with the isolation and the challenges that we're facing, that simple act of encouraging leaders and coworkers, we know from Gallup data, it doesn't matter who asks you how you're doing, as long as somebody asks. And then I think the other thing is it relates to that connection piece, is we were seeing some of the employers take a step to connect people in like situations and create employee resource groups so that, parents of, 0 to 4s can connect with each other. Parents of special needs children, like how do you create those categories so that they know who their people are that they can lean on and have connection with? Because again, it's, if I know that I'm not alone, then I'm more likely to both feel commitment to the greater world, to my employer. There's something that happens in that simplicity of helping people feel heard and connected.
100%, totally agree. And I think that that's a perfect way for us to wind it up, is that really at the heart of all this is that foundational element of belonging. And we know that when people have that sense of, I am wanted in this community, I belong in this community, they make it easy for me to be here and be a part of it, that unleashes not only their desire to perform, but it actually unleashes all of their performance, their willingness to keep trying, to grow, to be curious, to challenge, all of those great things that we want our employees to do. So thank you, Susan. This was a fantastic conversation, and I definitely look forward to having more conversations. You interested me with the ERG conversation and support element of that, and that's a really hot topic today too. So look forward to more conversations down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks, Deb.
All right, bye-bye.